Well, welcome to our live 3.0 webinar series. My name is Nicola Pomponio. Thank you so much for taking the time to log in. The 3.0 series focuses on harvest and specific winemaking techniques of each estate. We are so excited to be able to virtually travel to Italy. Today, we discover one of the most famous wineries of Italy in Chianti Classico. Without further ado, I would like to hand over the virtual microphone to the Lady of Chianti, Laura Bianchi. Ciao, Laura. Come stai?
Ciao, Nicola. Nice to be with all of you today. Thank you to spend your time to listen about Castello di Monsanto.
So we're very excited to learn about a little bit more about the details of what happens during harvest. So we're really excited. Let's jump right in.
Perfect. So we are really in the hottest period of the year. Of course, the harvest is the most emotional moment for the winery, but also really tiring moment. We are all very nervous until all the grape is inside the cellar. And as far as today, we still need a week to finish the harvest. So let's start from how we make the harvest. The timing is determined by the entire year. The quality of the grape is not only created by the climate in the last months before picking, but is the entire climate of the year that for sure influence the quality of the grape. An ideal harvest is a winter, a cold winter, because the lower temperature in the winter helps a lot to reduce some diseases that could attach the vine. And this year the winter was mild. We had just 3 or 4 weeks a little bit cooler between January and February, but was cold enough to prevent some diseases. Then another key moment is the spring. Because we need a rainy spring, because the rain creates a reserve of water for the roots of the vine. And this year the spring was quite good from this point of view. But at the beginning of April, when Sangiovese buds started to open, there was a couple of days of frost, and for sure this affected the quantity of the grape. We are estimating 2020 to be about 10% less production than an average year. Then
that small frost cost 10%, 2 days of frost.
Yeah, because it was when the buds were just open, and then the frost could affect a little more when the bud is smaller. But it was not a strong frost, thank to God, because there was a lot of ventilation and this helped a lot. But for sure it affected a little bit the development of the vine.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then we have, yeah. And in the with the climate change, this is happening quite often. In the last 3 or 4 years, it happened almost every year. In this area, less than in other area of Chianti Classico because of the ventilation. The ventilation avoids humidity, and so the frost is less strong than in higher Chianti Classico, for instance. But for sure, it is going to happen more often than 20 years ago. Then we had a very good April and May, fresh but not with good rain. And then July and August has been warm. Above all, August was really hot and dry. No 1 day of rain in August, but the vines had a good reserve of water, so there was no problem in the process of vegetation of the vine. This is the reason also why we decided not to what we call sfogliare. Usually in August we eliminate the leaves around the benches to help the benches to have a better maturation. But this year, because of this hot and sunny August, we decided not to do it. Otherwise, the sun could attach too much the bench and create an overripeness. And this was a good decision made in August. Then beginning of September, a couple of days of rain, which helped really a lot. And we started the harvest. Of course, we started with the Chardonnay, the white grapes, a week later than average. We started the 8th or the 9th of September. But the grapes were fantastic. I think the best grape of Chardonnay we had in the last 4 or 5 years. But of course, now we need to see how will be the wine. How we decide when it's time to pick. Of course, every varietal has its own maturation time. And Sangiovese is a grape that has a very long vegetative cycle. So the buds start to open earlier than a Cabernet or Merlot, and the maturation is later for sure than a Merlot or Syrah. So the varietal for sure is a point to determine the maturation. But for every single parcel, starting usually from the middle of September, every 3-4 days, we pick some berries on the benches and we make analysis to see the main element, which is sugar, acidity, pH, and also some phenolic parameters that can tell us how is the evolution of the maturation in this week, in the next week, and in the following one. Of course, then there is the climate, because if we have 3 or 4 days of rain, everything could change. And so it's not so easy to decide it's time to pick. I always say that the right time to pick is to go in the vineyard, taste the berries, and you can immediately understand if it's time to pick. But this is a very empiric system, the old system.
Better.
Yeah, if you compare the grapes, just tasting the grape of one vineyard to the other, you can immediately understand the differences of the soil, of course of the vine, of the varietal. Is incredible how you can learn just tasting the grape. The density of the skin. How strong the skin is another very important point. How if it's a fragile skin or is a strong skin. For sure, this will influence also the final wine.
I was lucky enough to do that here in Napa a few years back, going from mountaintop to lowlands and tasting the fruit, the Cabernet fruit. And it was amazing how you could really, it's not textbook, it's literally, you make decisions based on just the flavor profile that day. And I was with the winemaker, so it was just really amazing. Go on, please.
So we usually pick, for instance, Colorino before Sangiovese, and then Canaiolo, and usually the last one is the Cabernet Sauvignon. We also have some Merlot for more Rosso line, and is the first red grape that we pick because it gets mature usually 2 weeks earlier than Sangiovese. What we do when it's ready to be picked, everything at Castello di Monsanto is picked by hand. So this is for us a very important point because between a machine picking and a hand picking, there is a big difference in the respect of the grape, of the benches. Of course, if it's raining, and is an emergency moment, we have also a machine, but that we use only if it's really necessary. So all the grapes are picked and put in this red basket, about 20 kilos. And then the basket are brought into the destemming point. I think that Rachel can show quickly how simply working. We don't want, there are other wineries that they pick in larger basket and they put everything in one big container. We prefer to pick in small basket because the grape doesn't crash. And so the grape arrives to the destemming point entire without being too much damaged for the picking. When the grapes arrive, there is a sort of conveyor, which is a selection point. The first selection of the benches is made in the vineyard. Our pickers know that if a bench doesn't show for our standard, they leave the bench on the vine. A second selection of the benches is the one you're looking. There are 4 people checking on a table before the grape arrive into the destemming machine. Destemming is a quite important moment. A good and sophisticated destem machine could make the difference because if you can regulate the machine in the right way, it can work in the best way for different type of varietals. The destemming of a Syrah is completely different than a destemming of Sangiovese. And so a good and sophisticated machine can feel the difference and don't break the stems. Because otherwise part of the stems can go inside together with the berries. And stems are giving to the wine a little bit of elegant and fine tannins. Inside the stems there are tannins, but they're not the fine one for the wine. So the destemming point is quite important. Then after the destemming, by gravity, the wine, the berries arrive into the fermenting vats. And at this point we do it's important to keep the temperature of the grapes as cooler as possible, not to create micro fermentation inside the berries. So we use cold ice, is azoto liquid that we put on the berries to put down the temperature. The beginning of the maturation need to be in lower temperature. As higher is the temperature, of course the fermentation create a higher degree inside the vat. As higher is the temperature, as less we can extract in terms of color and aromas of the grape, of the wine. So the first 3-4 days, we keep the temperature of the vat a little bit lower, around 20, I don't know in Fahrenheit, in Celsius, around 27, 28 degrees. All the temperature, all the fermentation vats are temperature control, and we have conical vats for fermentation. We copy them from the old wood tank used for fermentation, but they're all conical because it helps a lot in keeping the skins down and create a system of it's called convection, a system that the wine turns inside the vat by itself. above all with a system of maturation that is called délestage, and that we like to use here at Monsanto. Délestage is a system that we use in the mostly in the first 10 days of fermentation. It's quite simple. We pump the liquid out of the tank into an empty tank. All the skins, the skins are softer than the liquid, so they tend to stay up. All the skins come down. In the middle of the vat, there is like a web of chains. So the skin goes through this chain like a filter, because the skin tend to be very compact, and we need to open them to extract as much as possible. So the skins go down when we do délestage, and then we pump the liquid back. And we do this process every day because the skins are up again after 24 hours. But because of the shape of the vat, the conical shape, the skins tend to go up slower than in a cylindric vat. Is a system, délestage is a system used a lot in Burgundy with Pinot Noir, because it's a system to extract in a elegant way the tannin of the grape. We don't want to be too aggressive because we think that Sangiovese essence, the Sangiovese main element is the elegance and the finesse. And délestage is for us a system of maturation that is combining more with our philosophy of production. And then, of course, we also do the regular pumping over from the bottom to the top. I think Rachel can show how briefly can be made. We pump the liquid from the bottle of the vat to the top, and on the top there is a system to spread the liquid on the skins. This process is very important because during the fermentation inside the vat, there is a lot of CO2, so there is a lack of oxygen, and the yeast need oxygen to work, to ferment, to ferment the sugar into alcohol. If we don't give oxygen to the yeast, they stop their work, their job, and we risk a stop of fermentation, which is quite a problem during the fermenting part of the wine. An important thing at Monsanto, we don't use selected yeast. All the yeast for red grapes, we use selected yeast on Chardonnay, but for the red grapes, we don't need to use any other yeast, only the one naturally on the skin of the grape. And thank to God, we have a great family of yeast in the vineyards and also in the cellar, because they also develop inside the cellar fermentation after fermentation. So how long keep the maturation? This is something that is not decided by a formula. We decide vat by vat. We decide tasting the wine, of course making some analysis to understand the main element, and then usually the maturation is from 18 days to 22, 24 days. But every vintage is different, and every vat is different. We vinificate each single parcel, less than 1 hectare, by itself. And we keep the wine separately until usually January or February, when we start to decide which vineyard is going into the Chianti Classico Annata, a wine that we don't export to the United States, and which one is going into the Chianti Classico Riserva. There are, believe me, very few wineries at least here in Chianti Classico, doing this great job of selecting and vinificate each single parcel by itself. But it's the best way to really understand year after year what happened in your vineyards. And now we have been making this since 20 years, so we know exactly now what's going on if we change something in the pruning, in the cultivation of the vineyard, and of course there is the climate, which is always different every year. But it's the best way to control each single parcel. And it's also very funny to taste all these parcels, because we taste them blind. It's me, my father, and Andrea, the winemaker. So it's like to taste the wine without the label. We are not influenced by knowing where the wine is coming from. But it's also very useful for us to understand what happened in every single little vineyard of the property.
Laura, how many parcels are there? I'm just curious. How many?
In Chianti Classico, about 60 parcels.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, looks like we're moving towards the question and answer portion of our webinar. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we roll into that, Laura?
No, there's so many things to say. Of course, then after the alcoholic fermentation, there is the malolactic fermentation, which is another important fermentation, usually in November. And then, of course, we're ready to put the wine in the oak. That's another important moment. Decide which wine is going in which type of oak. It's a key moment too, because it's a winemaking mistake to put the wine in a wood container, which is too much for the wine. So it's a winemaking mistake to make the wine be overpowered by the oak. So to choose the right oak is another key moment in the entire process.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for such an insider's view of winemaking at Castello di Monsanto. It's really great to see the intricacies and all the details that go behind everything. And I'm sure this is just, you know, the nutshell. I'm sure there's so much more that goes into it that we can put into a 30-minute webinar. But it's amazing just to hear the stories and to understand the techniques and the processes. We do have some great questions that popped up in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and start with those. And by the way, if you do have any questions, please feel free to punch them into the chat and we'll go ahead and ask. We have a question: how is the destemming different between the Syrah and Sangiovese, and what are the different methods of destemming?
Can you read?
Yeah, looks like we had a little technical glitch there. So
I think I lost you.
How is the destemming different between Syrah and Sangiovese?
Depend on the harvest, I mean the climate, but usually Syrah is less strong to be destemmed. Sangiovese is harder. So the destemming machine has the inside that they need to rotate with a different speed and different movement if the berries is stronger attached to the stem or less strong attached to the stem. And also it's very important to determine the velocity if the skin is strong or less strong. And this is different every year and is different every varietal.
Great. Another question we had. Great. Another question we had is, do you use bâtonnage after the juice is pumped back in?
No, we use bâtonnage only on the white wine. On Chardonnay, 30% of the grape are fermented in tonneau, and the one fermented in tonneau are on the yeast. And so for this wine, we do batonnage. Batonnage is a system to move the sediment created by the yeast during the fermentation and put this sediment in contact with the wine, but not
Great.
for the red grape.
Great. Okay, next question. Which other vintage in the past is most similar to 2020? Can you tell from the grapes, or is it too early?
We could tell a little bit from the grape, and I'm very positive on this vintage. I would compare this vintage to 2016, the recent one. There are many similarities in the climate and in the grape that I've seen, and tasting the first vat, I think there are many similarities with 16.
Well, 16 is a great vintage, so looking forward to 20. Next question. Which grape varietal do you think will show the best with this vintage?
Sangiovese. No, for sure Sangiovese. I think Merlot probably has been the grape suffering more because August was very hot and dry, and Merlot maturation is earlier, so didn't benefit of the few days of rain we had in September, middle of September. So I think the best Sangiovese and probably Merlot, the one which suffered a little bit.
Okay, well, that's a good, I like that answer because Sangiovese is my favorite grape. Next question. Why Colorino and Canaiolo? Can you explain how these two grapes influence the wines?
Yeah, we like to keep in the Chianti Classico blend these two indigenous varietal. You know, Canaiolo and Colorino always been part of the Chianti Classico original formula created in 1700. And there are reasons. Colorino is a grape, as the name said, color, is a grape with a very strong skin and a very small berry. So it's a grape that has always been used to add a touch of color to Sangiovese. You know, Sangiovese is a lighter color. So 2-3% of Colorino gives a little bit of nerve to Sangiovese and also a touch of darker color. Canaiolo is the opposite. Canaiolo is similar to Sangiovese. Is a fantastic wine by itself for the aromas. It's so generous in the nose, a lot of perfumes. Has not the structure of Sangiovese. Has less important tannins. But a touch of Canaiolo helps to develop the aroma of Sangiovese, above all when the Sangiovese is young and is grown on Galenso soil like we are. When it's young, it could be a little bit close, a little bit austere. A touch of Canaiolo helps to open the nose, the bouquet. But the life of Canaiolo is shorter than a Sangiovese, so just a touch, 5% is it's enough.
We could probably do like a whole another webinar just on Canaiolo and Colorino and how it develops and affects the wine. So that was a quick nutshell answer.
To taste them by themselves to really understand.
Actually, somebody did have a question. When you're tasting, do you taste in like glasses that you cannot see the color of the wine? They mentioned that they do that practice in whiskey. I didn't even know that. They said, do you taste in blue colored glasses, a practice used for whiskey tasting?
No, we taste blind because we don't know where the wine is coming from, but in a regular glass. And we never decide the final blend because of the color. We always decide, of course, the color is important, but it's not determining the final blend. We always decide because of the nose and the taste of the wine.
Okay, one more question. I know we're going a little over, but this is great stuff. So What is your favorite parcel and what are the characteristics?
Of course, my favorite parcel is El Poggio, is the single vineyard El Poggio. But this is another story. Of course, it's a single crew. In all the other parcel, well, probably my favorite one is the vineyard around my home, because I can see this vineyard every day. I can sing a song every day to the grapes. So for sure, it's called Poggiorelle. Is a small vineyard around my house, and it's a great vineyard too. And is usually going into the Chianti Classico itself.
Poggiorelle, of course, and you can sing
Poggiorelle.
to it. My wife sings to all the plants as well, so that's I think that's very important. They seem to thrive. Laura,
Yes.
thank you so much for, I can't believe 33 minutes have already passed, but
Yeah.
it's always so wonderful to learn from you and to speak to you and to see you. We wish we could be there with you. This has just been a really wonderful 30 minutes, and I can't believe it's come to an end quickly, but I'm going to hand it back to you, Laura.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you again for your great job and your incredible help for us during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Grazie. And thank you, everyone, for being part of our live webinar. We'll talk to you soon, okay? Grazie.
Ciao.